One waterway carries roughly a fifth of all the oil that moves on the ocean. Not a canal with locks, not a pipeline you can dig around. A natural choke between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula, so narrow at the waist that tankers stack into lanes measured in miles, not oceans. If that gap closes, markets do not wait for a summit, they panic overnight. Its name is the Strait of Hormuz, and once you see what squeezes through it, every gas station on Earth starts to look like a downstream consequence of this blue slit on the map. Zoom into the eastern Persian Gulf. Iran fills the north shore, mountains falling toward the water, ports and islands strung along the coast. Opposite them, the Musandam Peninsula juts like a stone fist. Omani territory with the United Arab Emirates behind it. West of the strait, the Gulf itself, a crowded basin of oil terminals, naval bases, and shipping that has nowhere else to exit. East of the strait, the Gulf of Oman opens toward the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. Everything that leaves the Gulf by sea must pass this gate. That is the first fact geography will not negotiate. There is no alternate ocean door. You can dream pipelines across deserts. You can talk about Red Sea routes and Cape detours for cargo that can afford the extra days. But for the crude and condensate that load in the Gulf and sail to Asia and beyond, Hormuz is still the bottleneck that decides whether the voyage even begins. Look closer at the choke itself. At its narrowest, the strait is only about 21 nautical miles across, roughly 39 kilometers from shore to shore. That sounds wide until you remember what moves through it. Supertankers, liquefied natural gas carriers, warships, fishing boats, fast attack craft. The navigable deep water lanes are far tighter than the postcard width. Inbound and outbound traffic is organized into traffic separation schemes. Corridors only a few miles wide, with a median buffer between them. A VLCC does not wander. It follows a painted highway on water, watched by radars, escorts, and whoever owns the nearest coast. On the Iranian side, Bandar Abbas anchors the military and commercial weight of the northern shore. Keshem Island, the Gulf's largest, sits like a shield just offshore, with smaller islands and disputed rocks in the approaches. On the southern side, Musandam's cliffs and inlets give Oman a lookout over the lane. Beyond the strait, on the Gulf of Oman coast, Fujairah and other Emirati ports matter because some oil can move by pipeline to the Indian Ocean side. A partial escape hatch that does not replace Hormuz, but softens a total clamp. Geography here is not just cliffs and water. It is a system of terminals, islands, and alternate pipes that every energy planner keeps in a spreadsheet. Now the oil math, the reason this place is never just a local story. In a typical recent year, something on the order of a fifth of global seaborne oil trade and a huge share of liquefied natural gas from Qatar has to thread this needle. 20 million barrels a day is the kind of round number analysts throw when they want audiences to feel the scale. The exact figure moves with sanctions, OPEC decisions, and demand in China, India, Japan, and South Korea, the Asian buyers who sit at the other end of so many of these voyages. Europe and the Americas feel it too, because oil is a global price, not a local courtesy. Close the valve, and the shock is not confined to Tehran's neighbors. It shows up in freight rates, in insurance premiums, in the overnight spike on a trading screen in New York or Singapore. That is the second fact. Hormuz is not important because it is scenic. It is important because modern life still drinks from tankers that must pass a place Iran can threaten with coastal missiles, mines, and swarming boats. This is not theoretical. The strait has already been a battlefield. In the 1980s, during the Iran-Iraq War, both sides attacked shipping in what became known as the Tanker War. Iraqi jets hit Iranian oil infrastructure and tankers. Iran struck back at Gulf shipping tied to Iraq's partners. Neutral flags learned that a commercial voyage could become a target. Insurance soared. Crews sailed under threat. The Gulf's oil highway became a shooting gallery. Washington's answer had a name: Operation Earnest Will. In 1987, the United States began escorting re-flagged Kuwaiti tankers through the danger zone. American flags on Gulf hulls, American warships riding shotgun. It was a statement that the free flow of oil was a national interest, not a slogan. It was also a risk. Mines found American ships. The USS Stark had already been hit by an Iraqi missile in 1987, killing American sailors in a war America was not formally fighting. The USS Samuel B. Roberts struck a mine in 1988, and the United States answered with Operation Praying Mantis, a one-day naval battle that smashed Iranian platforms and vessels. Later that year, the cruiser USS Vincennes shot down Iran Air Flight 655 over the strait, a civilian airliner destroyed in a fog of war that still poisons memory on both sides. Hormuz taught a brutal lesson early. When great powers and regional wars share the same shipping lane, mistakes and escalations travel at the speed of radar tracks. Earnest Will did not make the strait gentle. It proved that the United States would spend steel and lives to keep the lane open. That precedent still hangs over every crisis briefing today. Fast forward to the peacetime that never feels peaceful. American carriers and destroyers still transit Hormuz under the eyes of Iranian censors. You can watch the choreography in public Navy footage. Flight decks secured for heavy seas, lookouts on the wings, helicopters scanning the water for small contacts. Allied frigates and Coast Guard cutters join the traffic. Merchant ships slide past amphibious assault ships like pedestrians sharing a sidewalk with armored trucks. The strait is a parade of sovereignty claims conducted at 12 knots. Opposite that steel is a different kind of navy. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy specializes in the waters near home. Fast boats, swarm tactics, coastal missiles, and the ability to make a tanker captain's day suddenly political. Public US Navy video from recent years shows Iranian fast attack craft cutting close to warships and merchant vessels, approaches that Washington calls unsafe and unprofessional, and that Tehran frames as presence and deterrence. The point is not the press release, the point is the geometry. In a choke this tight, a dozen small boats can create a crisis faster than a carrier group can politely negotiate. Mines can close a lane without a speech. A seized tanker becomes a hostage with a hull number. And seizures have happened. In the late 2010s and early 2020s, Iranian forces boarded or diverted tankers in and near the Strait and the Gulf of Oman, sometimes in retaliation for sanctions enforcement elsewhere, sometimes as leverage in a larger fight with Washington and Europe. Other times, US and partner forces publicly intervened to prevent a boarding in progress. Footage of helicopters, radio calls, and Iranian craft peeling away from a merchant hull. Each incident is a reminder that Hormuz is not only a map feature. It is a live contest over who sets the rules for ships that carry the world's energy. So what would a real closure look like? Not necessarily a declaration that the strait is shut forever. More likely a fog of mines, missile threats, insurance collapse, and captains refusing to sail. Markets price fear faster than diplomats write communiques. Asian refiners scramble. Governments tap strategic reserves. Politicians discover that voters notice energy prices before they notice maritime law. Pipelines to Fujairah and other bypasses help some Gulf producers. They do not replace 20 million barrels of seaborne habit overnight. A prolonged closure is an economic weapon with global blast radius. That is why even limited harassment moves oil prices. The market does not need the lane to be physically blocked. It only needs to believe the next voyage might not arrive. Iran knows this. So does Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Iraq, Kuwait. Every producer whose export map runs through the same gate. So does China, the largest customer for so much of this crude. So does the United States Navy, which still treats freedom of navigation here as a standing mission. Hormuz is where energy economics and military geography stop being separate subjects. Hold the map in your head one more time. A blue slit between Iran and Musandam. Traffic lanes only a few miles wide. Islands and ports that turn coastline into leverage. Tankers that look enormous until you remember how small the water is. Warships that transit as routine, and fast boats that can turn routine into a headline. A tanker war in living memory. An escort operation that wrote American blood into the shipping channel. A modern cycle of seizures, warnings, and near misses. And a simple number that refuses to get boring. Roughly 1/5 of the oil that moves by sea. Close it, and the shock is planetary. Keep it open under threat, and the world still pays a risk premium every day. That is the Strait of Hormuz. Not a trivia answer. A choke that can crash markets without conquering a single capital. One waterway, 1/5 of the ocean's oil. Iran on one shore, the Gulf on the other. The most dangerous shipping lane on Earth, because the global economy still has to squeeze through it.